Does anyone else go back and forth on whether this film was really good or really bad? I really like to talk about that. Hey there, this is your Matt Doodle Thomas Hands, still my heels in another video, and today I talk about the amazing Spider-Man and whether it was amazing or just okay. Because to me, it is not a bad film, but there are things that I really like to things that I just don't at all. And that's why this movie goes back and forth for me. Like, I'm gonna start with Peter Parker himself. For me, when it started, it was a really weird casting of Andrew Garfield as Peter Parker. Not because he was, inaccurate, but he was inaccurate for the time they put him in. Because this Peter Parker was supposed to be in high school. Because the Tobey Maguire version was more set right at the end of high school to him being an adult. But this one was supposed to be right in the middle of that. So it was a weird decision to, have this version. And what I mean by that is the fact that, one, he is extremely attractive. And Peter Parker, normally in high school, was just supposed to be someone that blended in, or at worst, not very attractive because of who he was. So it was weird seeing this very attractive man try to be that. And it was really strange. Because Andrew Garfield already had the appearance of Peter Parker outside of high school and in college, or even outside of school in general. And that's when usually Peter gets his glow up. So it was really hard for me to get past that, but now getting older, it's just kind of like, whatever. But how he acted was actually another back and forth thing for me, because they got him being awkward right, they got him being a super genius right, which was actually very nice to see because we didn't even really get to see that in the original films. So seeing it here was cool. We got to see this version of Spider-Man be the most quippiest Spider-Man ever, and it was awesome. That's when it felt like Spider-Man. And that's where people kept saying that this was the best Spider-Man and not good Peter Parker, because they kind of didn't really do the Peter Parker right, at least to me. Spider-Man was perfect.
In the future, if you're gonna steal cars, don't dress like a car thief, man.
What are you? You a cop?
Really? You seriously think I'm a cop? Cop in a skin-tight red and blue suit. You've got a mind of the true scholar, sir. I was going more for one of the guys who do the luge. Good thinking, good thinking. Here's the window. Get out the window. There you go, you got it. Whoa. Crouch!
Just let me go.
Is that a knife? Is that a real knife?
Yes, it's a real knife.
My weakness, it's small knives.
Just let me go.
Anything but knives! Oh, it's so simple.
Come on, let me go.
One second.
Knock it off, man. No. Come on, let me go. Stop it. Dude, that isn't funny.
It is kind of funny,
help.
man. He's not going anywhere.
Don't move.
You serious?
Who are you?
No one seems to grasp the concept of the mask.
Freeze!
I just did 80% of your job, huh? That's how you were paying me? Woo! Hey, watch out! I'm swinging here! All right, so you don't want to talk? There you go. Don't make me have to hurt you! I'm gonna throw you out the window now. Uh-oh. Somebody's been a bad lizard.
And that makes me want to talk about the Spider-Man costume itself. I do not understand what someone was thinking trying to make this costume. Not that it was bad. When I first saw it, I thought it was cool and weird. When I'm getting older now I just think it's cool. Now it's just cool. Like, I would be one of those that would use this costume playing the Insomniac Spider-Man games. But at the time, I thought it was a weird choice. And the reasoning? I kept hearing that the reason why this version of Spider-Man suit looks like the way it does is because it's supposed to be how someone would actually make the costume. But in my mind, I was like, doesn't this costume look more complicated to make than the original red and blue? And I say that now as someone who's trying to make a costume, and it's much easier to have simple patterns than whatever the Amazing Spider-Man costume is. It seems way more detailed and more exaggerated, and it's really odd. Like, it's cool on screen, but it does not look like someone actually made that, even though they try to show that he did. And I'm not saying that the Tobey Maguire version looked like someone made it, but this version kept trying to say that he made it. But that's the costume. Now it makes me talk about the actual gadgets. I liked seeing that this version of Spider-Man actually had web shooters, because the previous one only had organic webbing, so it wasn't exactly accurate, and it for a long time made me think that Peter Parker had, organic webbing. And yes, before this film, I had realized that Peter Parker in the comics actually had, mechanical web shooters. So when I saw this movie, I was actually very excited when I saw that. Oh my god, this version of Spider-Man actually has, mechanical web shooters, and that was cool. The only problem was how he made it. This was a weird thing for me, because they were trying to say that this Peter Parker was supposed to be a genius, right? That at least in the comics, he recreated his version of the web shooters by himself because it's his technology. But in this one, it's trying to say that the web shooters he actually got from Oscorp, and that he just re-engineered and put it in his watch and remade that into a web shooter. And I don't know, it doesn't really look like he actually made the weapon himself. That he just made a way to shoot out the web from his shooter and not the web itself at all. So it was kind of odd and made him dumber, if that makes sense. He just kind of took someone else's idea, because in the movie he said he developed it himself.
Webbing that I developed myself. I don't think you really want to know. Right?
It clearly showed he did not make it himself. So for the longest time, that bothered me. But now that leads me into the actual part of the films that I actually want to go from back and forth on, like Uncle Ben. I love this version of Uncle Ben. This was more in line to the Ultimate Comics, the original one, where we saw more of Uncle Ben and how much he was a parent to Peter. And I love that this version showed that, because it was so nice to see Peter have a dad.
Uncle Ben, you're a pretty great dad, all right?
Someone to care about, even if they had completely different interests, even if they had completely different ideas of life. The fact that he was just warm and comforting as a dad, but also had mistakes and was angry at him, was nice. It showed him as a person, and instead of like a mythical character. But that's where it also weirds me out, because of the line. Instead of "with great power comes great responsibility," it's this line.
He believed that if you could do good things for other people, you had a moral obligation to do those things. That's what's at stake here. Not choice, responsibility.
And I put it like this because I completely forgot the actual line, and it makes it weirder, because the whole point of the line was that it's supposed to be something that Peter is able to, rewind in his head over and over to give himself motivation to keep being Spider-Man, or to keep having responsibility. With great power comes great responsibility. But this line, this one they put in the movie to avoid being like the original film, negated that, and it felt a little more empty and hollow, if that makes sense. Not that it was actually like completely empty, but just that it just didn't feel right. But it was still a huge gut punch seeing Uncle Ben die, seeing him being a father to Peter, and then going off in an argument. And then causing Uncle Ben to die because he was the only one trying to do the right thing. That still gets me to this day, even more than the Tobey Maguire version. Seeing Peter be a complete dick was, still good. That's how Peter should be when he first becomes Spider-Man, or before that. But that's another thing. When he got bit, it did not feel like that was an actual accident he could have avoided. In the original and in the original film, it was literally supposed to be a science fair experiment that a random spider went to him and bit. But in this one, he went to Oscorp, where they're developing the spiders. That's fine, because that happened in the Ultimate Comics. But instead of it being a one-time thing that a spider bites him, he goes into a lab where there's a bunch of spiders, and he accidentally lets all the spiders go on him, and it just means that it would have been impossible for him not to be Spider-Man, if that makes sense. Yes, technically it's still an accident, but it's not in a way where it felt like anyone could have been Spider-Man, if that makes sense. He chose to go there. He chose to go into a lab with all those spiders, so it felt odd. The way he showed his powers was actually cool. Showing that they was more like making him go crazy. Finding out that, he can stick to walls, he can sense things, that, he's much stronger, that he gets more hungry, which is actually a very cool idea. And that he was also really, I guess, interested in flies. And I really liked how they showed the spider sense as it being a buzzing in his head that he doesn't have control over, and it makes him, go a little crazy. That's actually kind of cool. And how the spider sense actually pushes his body for him. And that was actually a very nice thing to actually see for this version. And I think with the tone they gave it, it was actually kind of cool to make it seem more like a horror type trope. Because it would be freaky if you just found out that you had cool abilities, and wouldn't be as normal. Now, his love interest, they did the live love interest 100 times better than the original films because the love interest in the last version was dookie, was horrible. She did not deserve Peter. Peter was weird about his relation with her, and it was just really toxic from day one. So it was like, nope, out of there. So seeing a good way to show the relationship between Gwen and Peter was really nice. Now, this is the trope where they put Peter in high school to have all these cool things happen, because in the comics, he met Gwen Stacy in college. But, we saw MJ in high school with Peter too in the original film, so it was fine for me. And seeing their relationship was actually really cute, and I actually really liked that. Again, I didn't like how charming Peter was, but it was cool seeing the relationship flourish as an actual couple, and how he was really trusting of his identity as Spider-Man. And that was cool, showing that she actually is a scientist like him, how their banter works, how they actually care for each other, and how she would actually try to help him in his endeavors. And now, I should mention this as I was talking about Spider-Man. I did have a back and forth on how he wanted to be Spider-Man. When he was Spider-Man, it was more out of revenge, and it wasn't out of any duty after his uncle died. Which, when I first saw that, I hated it. I did not like that idea at all, that he didn't want to actually help. That he just kind of felt like he did feel like it was his fault, but he just wanted revenge. But the way in this film he actually wanted to be hero was that he actually had a point where he could have went after the lizard, which I want to talk about him too as well, or help people. And that's where I grew throughout the years to actually like this piece of showing that he was selfish, but seeing an opportunity of him actually being able to help was his catalyst to actually become Spider-Man instead of a vigilante, to actually be a hero. And that was actually so cool, showing Peter as an actual human being instead of a mythic figure. So that's what I mean, that there's just a lot of things in this film that I go back and forth on, because there are things I do like and things I don't like. Like the lizard. I love seeing the lizard because, one, it's a lizard. Who doesn't think the lizard's cool? It's a giant dinosaur, to basically, as he says in this film.
Would have me believe that he, in his spare time, is running around dressed up like a giant dinosaur.
Not dressing up and not a dinosaur. He has transformed himself into a giant lizard.
I like the duality between Dr. Connors and the lizard, showing that he wants to technically cure people from being, weak or things like that by making them strong animals. And the really fascinating part is that technically the way Dr. Connors even got to the conclusion to even be able to grow his arm was by Peter. And that's another thing I really was back and forth on the fact that Peter is responsible for Dr. Connors turning into a lizard because he helped him be that. But getting older, I found that so much more interesting. I think maybe because of the time this movie came out, for me specifically, and how old I was, I just didn't like how complicated this film was. And getting older, it actually became very fun to watch more and more, noticing these little things. And I know people got a little weirded out that this, version of the lizard was just, I want to cure everyone with the lizard formula. But, that's been a thing, even in the comics to the 90s show. So it wasn't really a big thing for me. Also, remember, the lizard is literally making him go insane. Now, the design of the lizard. Yeah, no, they failed that design. They were so close from the neck down, but the head, oh my god, I know what they were doing. They were trying to make it look like the original comic version, but no one really likes that version. That version sucks. He looks awful. And the fact that he doesn't even have his trench coat. First, it makes him naked, which already looks weird, and it looks like a generic monster. So that was a thing, even though they would have points where they showed Dr. Connors have his trench coat, and he looked awesome. They should have just kept that. I like seeing how Peter moved as Spider-Man. He moved like an actual spider when he fought him, and that was actually really nice. There was a thing that I didn't like originally when I was a kid, was that he was into sports, or he was into skateboarding. But getting older and seeing what this version of Peter was like, I got used to it because it actually showed how this Peter would eventually become Spider-Man and how his moves work. How they would be more, acrobatic, more exaggerated. And that was, again, cool. I can't, you know what? I'm going to say amazing now. That's warranted. But there was the other piece that I did not really like because it was really way off from the comics. And that is George Stacy. Gwen Stacy's dad. In the original comics, he's supposed to be an ally to Spider-Man and encourage Peter to be Spider-Man. But this one, he's actually very much against Peter Parker, and he does not like him at all. And he just feels like This guy should not exist. So it was weird seeing that George Stacy be that guy, and at the end, basically tell Peter to not be with Gwen Stacy because then she would be in danger, which makes Peter more like a dick when at the end he just goes against that.
So I want you to promise me something, okay? Leave Gwen out of it.
Don't make promises you can't keep, Mr. Parker.
Yeah, but those are the best kind.
Okay, class, open your books. Let's begin on page 1.
Because in the original comics, they could have just, sidestepped that by saying, hey, Peter, please protect Gwen Stacy as Spider-Man, and then they don't have to worry about that. But I guess they just wanted Peter to be a little bit more of a douche at the end of the film, so that was odd. Oh, and before I forget, Peter's parents. The whole marketing of this film was going to be the secrets behind them, and how that would transfer to him being Spider-Man, which was already something I did not like, because it's the whole idea that Peter was destined to be Spider-Man, which the second film technically told us. Like, they basically showed the parents, and that's really about it. And then they would sprinkle in some pieces, but then just drop the entire point of them in the middle of the film, and then it just became a normal Spider-Man movie. So it was kind of, not necessary for the film. So that's why I didn't talk about it in the beginning of my review, because that's how important it is. But those are just my thoughts on the film itself and how weird it was for me. It was good, it was bad, and it was okay for me. There was things I liked. Like I said, I liked the web swinging. I liked the fact that they introduced the web shooters. I liked the actual relationship. I eventually learned to love Andrew Garfield as Spider-Man. The costume was weird. The choice of removing the saying was weird. So that's why I don't know where I stand. But what about you? Where do you stand in this film? Do you like it? Do you not like it? Are you okay with the film? Do you think it's just an okay film that just people over hate or over appreciate? I'd really like to know. But if there's nothing else, this has been Doodlemite. Hope everyone stays nerdy, and I hope to see everyone in the next video. Bye.